So this segment I want to call From Avoidant to Secure Attachment. Now, have you ever felt confused about your own feelings and impulses, so much so that it is hard to draw a clear line around what attachment style you think you have? Or maybe you've experienced feelings of preoccupation and obsession with a partner in the past to the point where you may find yourself compromising yourself in the relationship, and yet you would go back to them in a heartbeat. Or maybe you've become increasingly aware of your anxious tendencies and you've decided to withdraw from dating and or partnership altogether because you're not so convinced of your ability to rein in the neediness as necessary, and quite frankly, it all sounds and feels a bit too exhausting at this point. Or maybe you are aware that you need some clarification and a stronger sense of self, your inner experience, before you dive into the dating world again. But you're worried that taking time out will cause your heart to atrophy. And eventually you'll slip into avoidant dismissive traits that would make it harder for you to open up in the future. So as a result, you might find yourself wondering, am I taking time out to work on feeling more secure within myself? Or am I just becoming more avoidant and using needing to take space as an excuse? And you're probably really wanting to know how you'll be able to tell when you've healed enough to attract that special someone in your life. Well, if any of this sounds familiar, you are not alone. In my online Facebook group of over 11,000 members now, individuals often share posts and comments expressing these very same thoughts and concerns. So today I want to explore the question, how do I know when I'm becoming secure or I'm just being avoidant? Now, again, if you can relate to this, then I invite you to stick with me for this segment because we're going to talk about, number one, the importance of defining what anxiety, avoidance, and security really mean to you personally. We're also, secondly, going to talk about the dimensionality of attachment styles in general and how to track your path along those dimensions. And thirdly, we're going to explore how to utilize the body's resources as the ultimate authority on your own felt experience. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Brianna McWilliam, and I am a licensed and board-certified creative arts therapist, author, and educator with more than 15 years in the field, helping adults struggling with insecure attachment go from self-doubting to self-sovereign so they can attract those soul-shaking, passionate partnerships that they want. Today, I'm going to be sharing a clip of a live stream event that took place inside my private Facebook groups, which people can access once they've purchased one of my online courses. If you're interested in finding out if you might have insecure attachment, check out the link in the caption of this video. You'll be able to take an easy 4-question quiz and find out your attachment style, plus a detailed explanation. Now, if you like what you see in here, and you haven't yet, make sure that you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. I put up videos once or twice a week, and sometimes I will do occasional live streams through my YouTube channel, and I wouldn't want you to miss out. Okay, so I want to dive in, and the first thing I want to talk about is the importance of defining what anxiety, avoidance, and security, felt security, really mean to you personally. For example, you want to ask yourself, how do you understand anxiety? How do you define that in your own experience? What behaviors do you see and witness within yourself that might reflect an anxious response, or what we call protest behaviors, right? So protest behaviors are behaviors that protest the separation from you in an attachment figure. In terms of your thoughts and your beliefs, it might sound like, I'm not happy unless I'm in a relationship. Otherwise, I question why nobody wants me and I figure I must be doing something wrong, or I'm not good enough for some reason. And there are so few opportunities for true love in the world, you really have to hang on to what you can, right? So this is a more anxious internal monologue. So the question is, how do I know if I'm just being avoidant? I have experience of being anxious, and now I want to be secure, so I'm taking time out, but am I just being avoidant, or am I actually being secure? So you also want to take a look at, how do you experience avoidance? Because every anxious individual is also expressing avoidance, especially when you're chasing down emotionally unavailable partners. When you do that, you are avoiding your own inner space by preoccupying yourself with what's in the external world. And when we chase down emotionally unavailable partners, we're chasing people who are not going to look that closely, right? And we know they're not going to look that closely, and we don't really have high expectations, so we're not going to be let down in the same way. Of course, the paradox is eventually we are anyway. In partnership, your desire grows and suddenly you want to be seen, but you're going to have an ambivalent relationship to that. So let's take a look at avoidance. You ask yourself the same question. How do you see your behaviors as being avoidant? How do you experience avoidance within yourself? So some traits of avoidant behavior include being accustomed to partners demanding a lot of you, so you tend to be really sensitive to even benign requests. You might view generosity as a form of manipulation that obligates you to reciprocate. You might anticipate being blamed for when things go wrong in the relationship. Sometimes people might describe you as having a fear of commitment, but you might feel as though you actually take commitment quite seriously, so you don't do it very often. You might be considered aloof or emotionally distant, but sometimes still waters run very deep. And you may find that when you do feel things, you feel them very intensely. It could be hard, however, to identify that feeling, let alone name it, label it, and express it in an appropriate way. So rather than worry that it's all going to come spilling out in a way that you can't control, you really try your best to shut it down. Deep down, you might also believe, and incidentally, anxious people believe this too, that you have to earn love and approval, because both anxiety and avoidance evolve from conditional forms of love. Avoidant partners are also drawn to partners who are challenging and or edgy and make them work for it. These are partners that are really going to light their heart on fire. They are not, however, most commonly the partners they will commit to because they're not comfortable being that lit up for all the reasons I'm explaining here. And individuals who struggle with avoidance, I call them rolling stones, they often, as a result of these fears, tend to create the scenario they fear the most, which is winding up in a partnership with someone who is emotionally dependent on them. And so it proves to them their more pessimistic view on love, which is that it comes at the cost of personal freedom. So you would ask yourself, when you are taking time out, when you are working on yourself, how many of these traits are in operation for you? How many of these things resonate in your inner space? And then, of course, you want to ask yourself about security. When I'm taking time alone, am I doing this because it feels good? Do I feel rejuvenated? Do I feel refreshed? Do I feel like it's giving me time to work on my passions and pursuits, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with being in relationship to someone else? It's not that I'm preoccupied with being close to or far away from something. It's more that I'm really interested in this thing that's going on inside here, and it's really enthralling me and exciting me, and I'm feeling good about this thing, and I'm just going to ride this good feeling. And if it winds up that I end up having these proximities to people in my environment, that's great, but it's not the primary focus of what I'm doing right now. Then that's more of a secure disposition to assume. So that leads me to the second thing I want to talk about, which is the dimensionality of attachment styles in general and how you can track those dimensions. So you might have, let's say, high anxiety, let's say low anxiety, right? You have, let's say, low avoidance, and you have high avoidance. Now, when we talk about the dimensionality of attachment and moving from avoidant to secure or anxious to secure, you may have a path in and around this quadrant, this plot, right? So let's say, so this person indicated that they started out noticing more anxious traits within them. So that means they had higher anxiety, and for the sake of argument, let's just assume they had low avoidance. So over here, this is the anxious quadrant. Now they're noticing that, well, I'm noticing that I'm taking more time for myself. I'm noticing that I'm less interested in being in relationship with people. I'm less interested in online dating and all of that. So they are perceiving that as increasing avoidance. So if you're noticing a reduction in anxiety, then you might be moving in the secure direction. If you're noticing, but maybe you're interpreting it as increasing avoidant behaviors, so in which case you'd be moving towards avoidance, right? Now the other option is you could be moving towards the dismissive quadrant, the avoidant quadrant, right? So how do I know what direction I'm going in? Because all of these directions are in some ways qualified by behavior, at least in the way it's currently discussed in literature, okay? And the problem with qualifying ourselves through behavior and symptom lists is that it emphasizes the external. And that is at the basis of what causes insecurity in the first place, right? We're seeking some kind of external validation for the internal experience. Now, of course, we're all going to want and need and experience that on different levels. But when we experience it to the degree that we don't feel comfortable within ourselves, then we really have to look at how we are ascribing meaning to our experience, okay? Now, attachment styles, I think, are a wonderful way to begin with this, including like the symptom/behavioral attitudinal lists I just gave you, because it's kind of like stabbing your finger on a map and then determining where you need to go from there, right? But the impetus, the impulse in what direction to go in doesn't start from out there. It starts from within here. So those are so you want to take a look at what are your like trigger scenarios. What are those situations where you have noticed yourself slipping into some kind of survival coping mechanism, whether it's avoidance or anxiety, meaning, and that flipped you into survival mode, which means you became preoccupied with proximity, whether it is moving towards that person or moving away from them. And then noticing if your behavior looks like creating an individual space or an individual experience, is that behavior evolving as a reaction to or a response to proximity to someone, or a thought about how someone might act or behave? Or is that a behavior that just emerges from some direction that your heart wants to go in because it is a good feeling and it wants to turn downstream with it? So if that's the case, you're moving in a secure direction. So this is like, I decided that I needed to strengthen my boundaries, so I thought I would take a pottery class and learn how to make bowls, because bowls are a great symbol for containment, for holding things, right? And I get my hands dirty, I get to touch mud, or clay, and I get to mold things in the way that I want them, which means now I get to exercise my agency. I get to make choices that are my own, right? And incidentally, when you create bowls or you throw on the wheel, for example, it's an extremely centering experience and grounding experience for your energetic body, because your whole body is tensed up and focusing in a center point. So if this is something you want to do, I highly recommend taking a pottery class, because once you are able to accomplish this, then your interactions with individuals in any one of these quadrants will feel a little bit more stable, because you are on stable ground. And even if they're unstable, or when by that I mean like, they're insecure or they're a bit inconsistent in the way they communicate and relate to you, then it's no skin off your back, right? It's really about whatever they're going through, and you don't take that in as readily. Okay. And the third part is how you can utilize the body's resources as really being the ultimate authority on your felt experience. What do I mean by that? Well, basically I mean, if you're asking yourself, how do I know if I'm moving this direction, or this direction? Well, my answer to that would be go in and ask. Just go in and ask. Am I doing this as a survival response? Is this an avoidant behavior that is a survival response being stimulated? Right? Now, maybe your conscious self will have an immediate awareness around that, and maybe it won't. So I'm just going to take this down for a minute. Now, let's say it doesn't. Let's say you're like, I don't know. You're stuck in your head, right? You're questioning yourself, full of doubt. Okay. So this is where I like to use the tools that I offer in my online courses to figure this out. And one of the tools is to just open it up to the body, okay? There's a couple tools I use for this. I'm just going to show you one right now. So I like to draw a circle. I've been doing scribbles like this all day today. And just, this is like a projective exercise. I'm going to take a utensil in each hand, okay? And I'm going to, incidentally, I'm doing one in each hand because I want to stimulate bilateral stimulation, because oftentimes when we're stuck in survival mode, there's information, let's say, in the limbic part of your brain that's kind of stuck on repeat and it hasn't really been encoded in the neocortex. It can also mean that there's information in the right part of the brain, which is an illogical side of your brain, that if we can stimulate both sides, now they can start to integrate and communicate with each other better, and that's how we're able to move traumatic energy or insecure energy, allow it to move through us on a body level. So I take one in each hand to encourage bilateral stimulation. I'm doing a demo, so I may not be able to do it quite adequately, but if you can, if you're going to follow along with me or do this on the replay, you want to just make sure that you're crossing your arms at the midline, okay, until it feels natural to stop. And then I encourage you to find a shape. Find a shape in the image that stands out to you, and just to go with that. And you can continue to play with it. You can, continue to flesh it out, add to that. The body works with metaphor. The body communicates through symbol. Symbols are the most foundational aspect of communication that we have. And I actually find symbols 1,000 times more efficient than verbal language because it carries so much information all at once. It communicates so much information all at once. Now, in real time, our neocortex has to catch up, right? Our egos, our waking mind has to catch up. So that's where the deciphering what it means on a verbal linear level becomes helpful. One of the ways that I encourage you to explore that is by considering that whatever comes through is a symbolic, metaphorical communication from your unconscious self or from your body or from an aspect of you or self part. Another word you might use for this is like inner child, right? So you might ask, what is your name? What is your wisdom? What do you need? How can I give this to you? And then just allow yourself, now you can switch to the non-dominant hand, sometimes I do that, or you can just let whatever comes to your mind, free associate, let whatever, the first thing that comes to your mind be what it is. So, what is your name? So mine says butter in the sky. What is your wisdom? I like to change colors sometimes. What is your wisdom? It's all gravy, baby. What do you need? Trust me, let it flow. And lastly, how can I give this to you? Relax, sleep, exercise, eat, and dance. You can continue asking questions, and you can allow the dialogue to evolve from those things, So the guidance that's coming through for me, I immediately have some associations. I've been working a lot lately, and I have been feeling like I want to get back to my body. I want to get back to eating a certain way. I want to get back to exercising a certain way. I want to move in a certain way. Like I want to dance so that the energy moves through my body in a sensual, creative way. Because there's a receptive, allowing energy that creates for me. And I want more of that. And I've been feeling very stressed by a lot of the active energy that has been awake in my body. So sleeping sounds great to me right now. All of those things are wisdoms that I take with me that I might continue to explore. But you could also do this exercise posing a particular question, like if you're worried about, is this a behavior of mine that is becoming more avoidant than it is becoming more secure, then you might go in and just allow yourself, just raise that as a question in your awareness. Go in, allow something to emerge, let it be projective, let whatever comes through in your free associations be what they are, and then notice where it lands within you, right? And have a practice of self-inquiry and reflection upon it. And I invite you to consider that whatever that process reveals for you is 1,000 times more true than any behavioral symptom list that you might look at. Because behaviors, they can be useful, as I said again, in helping us to see the road. They can tell us more or less where we might be starting out, right? They can tell us more or less where we might be starting out, but it is the inner experience and the wisdom of your deeper knowing on the body level that is going to allow you to move in the direction that you want, and also become like your compass to help you calibrate that.